Welcome to Denver Startup Week. I'm Tammy Dorr, President and CEO of the Downtown Denver Partnership and co-founder of Denver Startup Week. I'm so excited to bring all of these dreamers and visionaries together. Our country was built on capitalism, entrepreneurs drive that, and we could all use a little bit of dreaming right now. We're able to bring Denver Startup Week to this community thanks to our sponsors. Join me in thanking our 2020 Denver Startup Week sponsors. Our title sponsors, Downtown Denver Partnership, JP Morgan Chase, Prologis, and Zero. Our track sponsors who have made all of the great content you're hearing today possible. Battery 621 and the Public Works, Capital One Cafe, Colorado Lending Source, Friday Health, Quizlet, Exactly, Zayo, and Zestful. Our headline event sponsors are bringing the excitement of this week to you. Thank you to Wix, Kenzen, MAPR Agency, Obsidian HR, Kickstart Fund, Promontory Mortgage, Molson Coors, and Comcast. And finally, thank you to our partner and member sponsors. They're all listed on the screen. Please say thank you to these companies as you enjoy our virtual Denver Startup Week. And don't forget, use hashtag DenStartupWeek to share your experience and moments of inspiration on social media.
Hello, I'm Sal Gentili, CEO of Friday Health Plans, and we're proud to sponsor the growth track this year at Denver Startup Week. We're a company that just entered a rapid growth phase, so we felt it was particularly appropriate. When my business partner and I started Friday Health Plans 5 years ago, we knew we wanted to create a company that catered to people who bought their own health insurance. The Affordable Care Act was just getting going, and we saw an opportunity to serve a brand new market of health insurance consumers. Independent consultants, startup groups, gig workers, service industry workers, designers, creators, and other independent professionals, like many of you here today. We knew that if we built a health plan that was simple to buy, easy to use, had great customer service, and most of all was affordable, we could compete against the big insurance plans who only focus on serving big companies. After spending 5 years getting into the Colorado market and completing a successful proof of concept, we successfully closed a $50 million round of growth funding earlier this year. We're now about to expand to 3 additional states later this year, hire more than 400 employees to support our growth, and eventually be in more than 10 states by 2025. I wish each of you good luck in your startup and growth pursuits. And as you think about your upcoming health insurance needs, I hope you consider fellow growing startup Friday Health Plans. Open enrollment starts November 1st. Check us out at fridayhealthplans.com.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Denver Startup Week. I'm Jake Cohen, the Growth Track Chair and member of the Denver Startup Week Organizing Committee. Thank you for joining us for our first ever virtual Denver Startup Week. If 2020 has taught us anything, it's that we are more powerful when we come together as a community to share ideas and help make each other better. And here we are, virtually showing the world what Denver is made of. At Denver Startup Week, we strive to make all of our sessions a space where attendees can connect, learn, and grow, regardless of gender identity, gender expression, race, abilities, sexual orientation, and the intersectionality of identities. There's something for everyone at Denver Startup Week, and we thank you for joining us. Over to you, Natalie.
Hey, thanks so much. I'm going to start sharing my screen, so give me just 1 second. Are you able to see this? I'll take that as a yes. All right, so kicking this off, welcome to Negotiation is Everything. I'm excited to connect with you today, and I'm sorry we couldn't meet in person. This workshop will include a few interactive polls and a live Q&A later on, but we welcome your questions and comments in the chat at any point. If you are watching from YouTube, you won't be able to participate in those polls, but you are welcome to add comments in the chat. You will have the ability to upvote questions, so feel free to do so at any point. It's nice to meet you. I'm Natalie Levy, a newer resident of Boulder, Colorado by way of New York City and San Francisco. I'm an engineering grad by background with a professional background spanning derivatives trading, enterprise sales, and technology investing. I'm excited to connect with you all today around the topic of negotiation, as it's something I've been really passionate about over the years. Today's content is a sample of what I've learned over years of selling enterprise technology products, advocating for higher compensation for myself, and working with others to negotiate theirs, reading and optimizing best practices, and generally testing boundaries in life. I've hosted several workshops on this topic around professional confidence to a Colorado-based women's community called she'sindependent.com. We'll talk a little bit more about this shortly. And if you're looking at the chat, Marissa will drop some links in there so you can check us out. If you like what you hear today, we'd love to see you at future workshopping. Some of it's free and other workshops are paid. And the community is intended for individuals who identify as women, but we have additional offerings for corporates. And if you're looking to invest in your women, sponsor them, or just be an ally. Please note that in today's talk, I may mention gender, men or women, for shorthand, but I'm really speaking to people who identify as that particular gender. These terms, we want to make sure that they're inclusive, and we're only using them to illustrate different points in examples. Marissa is She's Independent's wellness expert. She's behind the scenes today. She just gave you a little wave, and she's going to be monitoring that chat. You're welcome to send her direct messages at any point if you have questions or feedback. So here's a quick look at what we'll be covering in the next 30 to 40 minutes. Through your participation today, you should gain an understanding of what's needed for a successful negotiation. You should also work towards developing self-awareness around your skills so that you know where you need to invest. Finally, we'd like to get you thinking about how to prepare for your next negotiation and really just get you generally excited about it. So for our first poll, let's do a quick check-in. Rate your confidence level today with regards to negotiation. And we're going to leave this up for just a minute. All right, so it looks like the majority of you are around maybe a 2 or a 3, but we do see people on the edges. Great, so we're going to revisit that in just a bit. All right, so before we dive into the framework, we want to ask you a question. So feel free to drop in the chat, what do you think is negotiable? Almost everything. Love it. Time, salaries, fees. All right, so you kind of know where I'm going with this, but negotiation is everything. What do we mean by that? What is negotiation and when are you using it? Negotiation is really happening all the time, whether or not you realize it. It's really any conversation where there's an ask. Part of what starts a negotiation is you choosing to enter into that process. Whether you're buying a car, a home, a business, an item on eBay, it's up to you if you're up for negotiating in terms of price or any other variable. When you think about a compensation package, for example, and a few of you mentioned this in the chat, there are a number of inputs to play with. Salary is probably the first thing that comes to your mind, but you should think about things like job title, start date, flex time, reporting relationships, relocation expenses. I mean, the list goes on. Understanding what you can work with, that's going to make you that much stronger when you come to the table. So we're going to spend a few minutes diving into the framework, actually more than a few minutes. This is where we're going to outline some of those skills and really the understanding so that you can develop awareness and know where you need to invest. First, we're going to look at mindset and confidence because these are critical components to master. If you're not delivering your ask with authority, holding your position, you're not going to get what you want. If you show that you're informed and ready to make a deal, your counterpart will respect and want to work with you. Know the dynamics going in. As an example, if you get an offer, the employer wants to hire you. They've already invested. They're not going to want to lose you at this stage of the game. If you're an existing employee, the firm doesn't want to lose you either. Hiring and onboarding takes significant investments. And if you're already successful in that role, they're going to want to keep you. By understanding these dynamics and the information around the negotiation, you're going to be in a much stronger position, and it's going to show. Practice your ask. We can't say that enough. Role play, run through an exercise in the mirror. We recommend jotting down the important points you want to cover to ensure you are covering all of them, clearly articulating your ask. And remember, if you don't truly believe what you're asking for, it's going to come across to your counterpart. Something that I like to mention to our community, and I want to mention here, is two people can ask for the same exact thing and use the same exact language. But if the delivery and confidence aren't there, the individuals are likely going to see very different outcomes. Because mindset and confidence are so key, we wanted to drop a few tips in this slide. At She's Independent, mindset is really the foundation for anything and everything. If you don't have your mindset and confidence in a good place, the rest of these skills really won't matter. Let's talk about my mindset going into this presentation today. With over 400 signed up the other day, and then over 500 today, I did get a little bit anxious. Similar advice to what I would give you all going into a negotiation. I did the work with regards to preparation, feeling good about what I wanted to cover, and I made sure not to get in my head too much. I went hiking. I live in Boulder, so I went to Sanitas with my dog. I got outdoors for some rock climbing, got a good night of sleep, and I've also spent time mastering some anti-anxiety self-care. At She's Independent, we actually offer a twice monthly mindfulness and meditation break, something that is free today, so feel free to check it out. Marissa will drop that link if she has not yet in the chat. Next, let's dive into information. This can be looked at in terms of research and preparation. This is another key area that many don't invest nearly enough time into. What's the value and how should this influence your ask? You can always expect information asymmetry up front, and it's your job to do the digging, uncover the information, and then map out a path to success. A ballpark understanding is going to be necessary to be able to navigate that landscape. What are you willing to pay? With the job market, you can research through conversations with recruiters, sites like Glassdoor, speak to colleagues. You can typically run quick queries in things like Google, but you can always bounce ideas around off of others. And this is going to help you just develop that confidence in your voice. When I purchased a condo, for example, it was my first time buying, and I spoke to a number of people. I learned a ton in the process because there was limited information that I trusted online. If you're looking for a valuation for your business, and we will get into an example later, don't just listen to one investor, but get bids from multiple. If you're optimizing a sales process, make sure you're digging into the qualification steps to ensure that you're uncovering variables like timeline and budget, in addition to what's driving the project. Do your homework. By uncovering that information, you'll be in a much stronger position and have a lot more confidence in terms of crafting and holding your ask. Finally, let's look at negotiation strategy and skills. Your approach and delivery really do matter here. There's a ton we can talk about, including techniques that play into known human biases. A book I recommend to people regularly is called Thinking Fast and Slow. You can also read Undoing Theory by Michael Lewis. Behavioral economics really should impact you in terms of how you do business. We'll touch on a few negotiation skills here and in our case studies later, but we're not going to exhaust the list. We only have about, 30 minutes or so. Poker face is a real thing. What does this mean? If you're in person, you're going to want to present with confidence. Don't give facial cues indicating otherwise. Body language and dress matter. If virtual, focus on your tone of voice, your delivery. Have you ever noticed that inside sales professionals, meaning individuals that are doing business over the phones, they're usually seeing more success when they're smiling and when they're happy? I mean, it really is something that you can relay over the phones, even if you're not seeing the person in real life. Are you asking for a raise? Make sure you come across as likable. You want to reinforce why they want to work with you and why they want to hire you. Be direct. Show you are informed. Reinforce what you bring to the table, how you're going to contribute. And by the way, negotiation, it's not something that's always comfortable. Discomfort is something to be expected. This is one of my favorite parts. You can use techniques like silence to your advantage when it comes to asking for things. When you make an ask, stop, pause, and wait. The first person who speaks is typically one that is giving up ground. I'm going to pause for 5 seconds and show you how awkward it can be. In terms of your ask for more, but don't be completely egregious. It's important to indicate that you're willing to make a deal. The initial offer is typically going to anchor the negotiation. So it's good to move first and ask for more than you want so you can settle in on your target. Others will often plan for negotiation. This is a good thing to realize because it's a part of the process. Don't feel bad asking for more. A lot of employers, for example, will have approval to pay more than they're offering. So they're typically planning for a negotiation. Another strategy, and I mentioned this in the brief case study that I included for Denver Startup Week on the website, is the give-get. Don't give up something unless you're getting something in return. This may make more sense in terms of the scope of a sales negotiation. When I have a prospect who wants something, I make sure to tighten the deadline or ask for more buy-in. Do you want a discount? Okay, I'll meet you at your discount ask, but this contract needs to be signed by month end. One final thought is make sure you are taking the time to be intentional. Process what you are given. With compensation, for example, don't say yes on the spot. Sleep on it. That's a big decision. You may realize you need more. You want to feel good about what you ultimately accept. And being intentional with your actions in general is such a great life skill. Now let's turn to no and pushback. When I say no, I'm guessing a lot of you just tensed up. No is most likely a word that you have some negative connotations with. Past theory was that you want to get people yesing, and basically you want to generate this yes momentum. But no is actually a really great response for a variety of reasons. Before we get into that, I'd like you to think about the last time you experienced pushback. If you aren't in the habit for asking for things, you probably don't feel pushback often. If you ask for things without experiencing pushback, you're probably leaving something on the table. Failure and no don't often feel good, and it does require investment to get to the point of accepting and growing from the experience. But there's so much to learn from it. Dig in, figure out how you can make the no an assertive yes. No is a response, and it's driving engagement. And I would much rather hear no than nothing. Similar to the concept of growing from failure, make sure you're learning and pushing through no. I will bring up the example of rock climbing because it's something that I love to do. I'm sure a lot of you in Colorado, feel free to put it in the chat, are climbers as well, but it's such a great sport when it comes to, learning from failure. Looks like we're getting a few questions in the chat. So again, please feel free to upvote those if you want to ask them as well. And actually, one of the questions I will address right now. So pause and wait for the other party to speak first, but also move first and aim high. And that sounds contradictory. Can you describe this in more depth so I can see what you see as the marriage of these two concepts? So great question. So first, what I was suggesting was it's great if you can anchor. So you want to put out the first number because that's going to really influence where the negotiation goes. Anchoring and putting out a first number doesn't mean that I don't think it's contradictory, I guess, to waiting and pausing, because let's just say you want $100,000 and the offer is 70,000, and I say start with 120 or 130. By leading with that number, I'm basically pulling it towards what I want. But that has nothing to do with, in the negotiation itself, me pausing and me waiting. The pausing and waiting is really one of those techniques where if we are having a live conversation and I say to you, I'm looking for, 120. Is this possible? Pause. Stop. The recruiter will speak first if you execute that pause effectively, and you will get more information. The recruiter may say, they're waiting for you and it gets awkward, and they may then give up additional information and say, you know what, 120 is high, but we can potentially go to 100. Or it could be, let me check back, see if I have approval to go to this number. So I don't really think of them as contradictory. Please let me know if you still have a question there. And then we had an earlier question, which was, how do you handle let's meet in the middle? So I think that kind of plays into what I was saying about the anchor, because if you've anchored something and you have room to meet in the middle, or, kind of gravitate back towards kind of where the other person wants to play, that's a negotiation. So I think that if you are able to lead and you are able to anchor with what you want, and if you do use some of these skills, the confidence, the authority, you show why the number that you're putting out there makes sense. It's fine if you end up, meeting somebody, but you don't want to just go with their price. Negotiation is really, how do I get something out of this? So hopefully that answered your question as well. All right, so let's put this together. A lot of people skip over their why, and this is something I want to spend a few minutes on. I'm going to challenge you to dig into this point, because if you can understand your why and truly align yourself, you're going to have real conviction around what you're asking for. Do you want more money at work? One of our community members said she wanted a raise, but when we dug into it, she uncovered and shared that she was actually feeling undervalued on her team, noting that although she produced some great work over the years, she wasn't feeling supported or celebrated. We worked with her to map out what she really wanted. We dove into a strategic research and planning process, and more importantly than the 43% raise that we achieved, we got our colleagues to respect her newfound confidence and authority. Her ask was so high, her team wasn't even able to meet her on the spot, but set another meeting with their CFO. So in addition to that large compensation increase, she got a title change, buy-in around a career trajectory that she was excited about, and had this new confidence in herself. Let's move on to the case studies to demonstrate some of these negotiating tactics in action. Let's first expand a bit around the example of increasing your compensation. When we work with individuals to level up their comp, we run through a variety of exercises around the planning and research phase. Where do you excel, for example? Let's look at it from the angle of where you think you're best, but let's also look at it through the lens of your colleagues and managers. What do they say you're great at? If you have a 360-degree review, great. If not, you can ask. You should really be able to clearly articulate what you bring to the table as an employee. We would ask to dig into past projects. We would want quotable numbers so you can really reinforce your ROI and your impact to the business. So you're asking for 30,000 more, but you generated a significant pipeline. You generated $300,000 of pipeline in that one marketing event you spearheaded just in the first quarter. You generated leads. There's attribution in place. Is 30K even achievable? What does the market say? Talk to recruiters. If you have a backup offer from another company, that's going to give you additional confidence and demonstrate your market value to your current employer. We love backup offers. We also love playing, multiple offers against each other. We may even map out reporting lines, people of influence, and figure out how to support and generate buy-in leading up to the meeting where you're asking for that increase. After the work is done, we carefully craft out that communication, the ask, and we have you practice the crap out of it. Your confidence will show, but you'll want to be as thoughtful as you are direct. In terms of the actual execution and numbers, if you aren't confident calculating the numbers in your head, have a variety of scenarios written out in advance. Make sure you feel good speaking to the numbers. If a position doesn't offer a 401k, as an example, you can ask for more cash comp. There are a number of interchangeable variables that you can always play with. Is the company privately funded, and is there equity on the table? Do you understand the valuation of equity? I've worked with so many people that don't understand that shares alone don't mean anything without the broader context of the cap table and the valuation. Keep in mind, cash is worth a lot more than corresponding equity, typically, of course. So I would ask for more equity in lieu of cash. I'm happy to chat about this one offline if you'd like more support there. A few more quick thoughts on comp packages for new hires. Think about signing and relocation bonuses, kickers based on performance or equity raises if the business is cash strapped and if you know you're going to perform. Or if you're walking away from a payday at your current gig, don't feel bad planning for how do you get paid from the new employer. One final thing I will say is if you are in sales, you better be negotiating your salary. You're demonstrating your skills and your aptitude in this process. The best salespeople will negotiate every time. I'm taking a quick look at the chat again. It looks like there are a few more questions. So John from Boulder has asked, what about if the employer withdraws their offer and goes with the next candidate? How often does this happen? So I do not have stats on how often this might happen, but I have negotiated in every role I've ever been in. I have coached numerous individuals and they've gone through various negotiations. And I've never heard of a, employer withdrawing an offer based on an ask. Now, again, you want to be careful about how you ask. You don't want to demand, or you want to show the value. Why are you asking? Is it because of the market rate? Is there a reason? Do you need this? Maybe you bought a home, but as long as you're negotiating clearly and you're articulating why and why there's value for them to hire you, I've never heard somebody step back. Now, I will say if it's a completely, out of the ballpark compensation package, then you might not want to work there and you don't want to waste your time. So I do think it is worthwhile to make sure that you're at least ballpark aligned. And if the process ends because you're not, then that's for the best because you don't want to waste your time. Okay, let's move on to our next case study. If you're looking to raise some capital or take liquidity from your business, meaning take cash out of your business, you want to feel good about that valuation. First, do your homework. What valuation would you feel good about based on market rates? This is an example, so it might apply to your business, it might not at all, but let's just say you have a 3 million top line business, 90+% recurring revenue, high 80s retention, seeing 50% growth year over year. These are pretty good stats. You've heard that a 4 to 5x revenue valuation is doable based on, where companies are being valued. Similar to the job or the employer negotiation, we strongly advise that you're lining up multiple suitors or offers so that you can maximize information and valuation. You may realize through your research and intention setting, however, that valuation isn't the main driver. You may want a financial partner who can add real strategic value to your distribution model or business. You may realize that there is a strategic buyer ultimately. So you might want to partner with somebody who has a lower valuation up front, but they can do a lot for your business and ultimately be, a big acquisition. As a founder, especially if you're running a bootstrap business, meaning if it's self-funded, I can't encourage you enough to have more than one investor conversation. I've had a number of, situations given my past life in private equity where we are talking to a bootstrapped founder and they only have one offer. Don't do it. It'll just make you feel better, if nothing more. You also want to be smart about when you enter the market. Did you just move from perpetual licensing to SaaS? Great work, but don't try to sell if you're not seeing year-over-year growth. Or it's fine if you are, but just know the story and know how to tell it. If your runway is less than a year, don't wait. Don't let the investor take advantage of the situation where you're in need of capital. Have a plan and make sure you're investing towards it. And now for our third case study, which is a little bit more on the personal side. You're looking to buy your first home, and your broker hooked you up with a lender who's offered you a 30-year fixed mortgage. You're wondering if this is competitive, but you don't know where to start. You know rates are low given the pandemic today, but you have a high FICO score, and you want to ensure that you're seeing something competitive. Every basis point matters when we're talking about a loan of this size. Again, shop around, meaning talk to at least a few other lenders and see what kind of rates they're giving you. Up front, let them know that you have pre-approval for a 3.8%, 30-year. Tell them you're looking at your options and you want to be really competitive. Now, this is where it matters that you've done your research and you know what industry you're participating in. Speak to others who've already purchased homes, because you're not going to have that comfort level and you won't know what's negotiable if you don't. I was able to lower the mortgage interest rate when I purchased my condo through chatting with other friends and realizing that if I moved some retirement assets to a certain bank, I'd get better financing. There are so many levers and variables that you can play with. Term, type of loan, do the research. Make sure you're not being put in an investment vehicle or a financial vehicle that doesn't make sense for you. So it looks like we don't have any buyers in the market right now. I don't see any more questions in the chat, but always happy to answer them as they come up. So let's take a step back. How are you feeling right now? Are you ready? A few things you always want to ask yourself when you're getting ready for a negotiation are, do you know the market? Are you confident in your ask, and is it realistic? Are you able to stay firm? Are you able to walk away if your ask isn't met? Do you have a backup plan? Can you deliver your ask with confidence? And how are you with rejection? Remember that if you're not hearing no, you're not pushing boundaries, and there's likely a lot more you can get out of it. Failure is fine. Failure is great. It means you're learning. So now for a quick recap on what we covered today. First, I'm going to lead with invest in you, invest in your mindset and awareness, and make sure that you're being intentional. Everything is negotiable. To execute a successful negotiation, you need to research and prepare, deliver with confidence, and navigate the conversation strategically. Now let's revisit that earlier poll, if Marissa wants to bring that up. We'd love to hear how confident you are feeling now. We'll give it just a minute while you vote. It looks like your confidence has improved. This is great to hear. All right, I'll end that poll and I will share the results with you. So Marissa will drop a few links into that chat for you. But there's a lot more that we could cover in terms of mindset, human psychology, known biases. If you're looking for more, we'd love to connect with you at shesindependent.com, where we're offering monthly group mentorship sessions, one-on-one mentorship and coaching. We cover topics like negotiation, professional confidence, mindset. Most of these offerings are virtual today, but we are reintroducing group activities like masked rock climbing and group hikes. And then finally, we'd love to connect with you. So if you enjoyed what you heard today, if you learned anything exciting, if you're interested in supporting gender equality in the workplace, we would love it if you followed us, tagged us, shared our community with friends, family, and colleagues. Our Instagram is @shesindependent_. You can find us on LinkedIn and additional channels. You can check out the bit.ly for email sign up. We will draw a name for a free consultation, workshop, or speaking engagement. And we'd love to hear from you. So feel free to email me directly. I can send you the deck, answer questions, and we'd love to see you soon. That's going to bring us to the live Q&A. So please let us know if you have any questions, and we'd love to get them answered.
Hey, Nat, this is Marissa. In the chat, we've gotten a couple private message questions on why we spell women with an X. And I just feel like that is a great opportunity to reiterate why we do that.
Yes, please. Why don't you share?
Yeah. So, and by the way, we are not the foremost experts on inclusivity, but spelling women with an X creates space for people who identify as other genders, right? Or as genders that are women, but maybe were assigned a different sex at birth, for example. So it's our way to try and communicate that our community is inclusive, and for events that we put on for people where we say it's for women, it's truly for anyone who identifies as a woman, irregardless of what a gender has been assigned to you. It's really just about what you identify as.
Yes. And so women with an X, our community and a lot of the events are going to be geared towards individuals who identify as women. That being said, we love, bringing the conversation and workshopping to allies and to, your corporates. So it's not just for women. However, some of our events, a lot of our events for the community is going to be geared towards people who identify as women.
And then Natalie, we've gotten some great questions in the chat that I told folks I would make sure that we tried to circle back. I just want to let folks know if for some reason we don't get to your question, please feel free to email, because we're always happy to continue the conversation. I've popped Natalie's email in there a few times, and I'll drop that in as well as mine. But let me see, there were a couple that I wanted to make sure we circled back on. So some folks had about when the appropriate time is to negotiate your salary. For example, if you're already working for the company. So it sounds like looking for a promotion or a shift there.
Absolutely. And I did see in the chat, and I'm now looking at it, I was monitoring questions prior.
Cool.
I do one-on-one, so I'm always happy to take this offline and work with you. But I would say we'd want to dive into, what is your specific situation? Some of the people that I've worked with, it's negotiating upfront, it's negotiating after a year. A lot of times it's negotiating after a few years of performance. So I think it really just depends on, what is the scenario, and then we craft it differently. I think the most important thing is how you deliver and how you prepare for it. So if you've been an ongoing employee with an organization, you're probably going to be in that much stronger of a position if you're really performing. But there are absolutely ways that you can negotiate even if you're a newer employee. And I see some questions as well. So I'm happy also to jump in. I do have to give a shout out to John, who says, rock climbing is easy, negotiation is hard. I think John is climbing rocks that are too easy for him. So please pick tougher routes. No, I'm just kidding.
There was one question, Natalie, around somebody asking one thing that people don't commonly think of as being negotiable. And I, of course, took the liberty to respond and say, everything's negotiable, but I wonder if you could think of something that wasn't an example that you shared that folks often don't think of as negotiable that is.
I mean, there are so many things, like even the interest rate on your mortgage, for example. Marissa just bought her first place, and she didn't know to ask for other interest rate quotes.
Yeah.
So that's just an example. I mean, honestly, there's so many things. I have a strong sales background. So a lot of times I find myself, I'll call it doing sales magic, right? Where I've convinced somebody of something without meaning to or trying to. And so I try to be intentional about the way in which I ask for things and the way in which I communicate. That's both sales and negotiation. I naturally, get things done or influence people sometimes without meaning to. If you are a salesperson, you might find that you do that as well. But truly everything, I have found is pretty negotiable.
Let's see, there are a couple other good ones.
So I want to actually address, Rob had asked a question to the panelists and said, what's the toughest negotiation you've ever done? I don't have something in my mind right now, but what I will say is earlier in our careers, we don't typically have that confidence and that authority in who we are and what we bring to the table. I started on Wall Street, as an analyst, as an associate. I was always trying to reinforce my worth, inside my head and to myself. I think a lot of people who identify either as a woman or, somebody who has a background where you don't look like the other people, in your office, a lot of times just don't feel that organic support and mentorship. It can be that much harder and you can feel that imposter syndrome. So I will say anecdotally that both myself and then many I've spoken to, if you were earlier in your career, it's a lot of times just that much harder to ask for things. By the way, we love to support you. We're here as mentors, and as a community, we talk about these things. But I would just say having a voice, asking for even the smallest of things when you are a junior employee, it can just be really tough. So I wanted to, give a shout out to all of the younger employees here.
One of the related questions we got was how to handle the let's meet in the middle answer when you're negotiating. And I have to say, as a woman, like that hits me because I know I'm kind of programmed for compromise. So I wonder what your thoughts are on that, Natalie.
Yeah, I think that if you really dig in, and I love to talk about this, right? Like peeling back the layers of the onion and really digging into what you want and what you're looking for. I just want you to feel good about what you get and what you're asking for. And even if you don't get what you're asking for, just delivering it with confidence and authority, having alignment and saying, do I need to make a change? Guess what? Some working environments, they're not going to change the culture, the pay, but going through that exercise of what do you truly want, spending the time and asking for it, you're going to develop a new type of self-awareness and confidence. And then maybe you realize that you want to work at another employer and you're going to be more fulfilled. So I guess I challenge you, to make sure you're going through these exercises to make sure that you really are asking for. And if it's meeting in the middle, or maybe you didn't get a raise, that could be okay. But are people respecting you, and are you respecting yourself?
This one's super related to that. So someone asked, if you think your compensation is fair, but it's been stagnant, is there a reasonable way to ask for a salary increase? If so, how do you determine what amount to ask for, and how do you arm yourself with information?
So for you finance nerds, we've added a lot of liquidity to the system, and we're going to see some deflation probably, but just assume that money is worth less over time, money is worth more over time. Money is worth less over time, meaning you need more of it. So I think it's always fine to ask for and assume you're going to get some raise year over year if you are performing. There's actually somebody who we coached, or one of our community members, and she kind of is in that same position. She feels like she's getting a fine pay. She's already gotten a raise before, but we walked through it and she should be getting another raise. The fact is her market rate is higher. She's doing a great job. We don't just want to get a pat on the back. You want to be paid for what you're bringing to the table. Again, we're happy to have that conversation if you want to develop more confidence there, but everybody should be seeing a year over year increase, even if it's small, if you are a performing employee, except if the company, truly is not able to do anything across the board. Maybe, they're really cash constrained, or in this pandemic environment, their business is really hit, but then maybe there's something else, the title change, the reporting, some way for them to appreciate you and show you that you're a valued employee.
Yeah, I love that tip, because I think sometimes we don't think about the other things that we can negotiate at work.
So Rachel,
I was just going to read that one.
Yeah.
Go for it.
So Rachel asked a question. Have you noticed a difference between negotiating with men and women and tactics? So this kind of goes to my point earlier. I didn't call out gender, but I was kind of implying it, which is two people can ask for the same exact thing. But let's just pretend, right, for the sake of the argument, that this woman doesn't have experience with failure, pushing boundaries. Even if she uses the same words, she's probably not going to come across as strong if she hasn't done the work to develop that voice and to develop that authority and that ability to handle risk, failure. And here's an example where there's actually data around it. A lot of women are applying to roles where they meet basically all of the criteria, all of the job requirements. And a lot of times men are applying where they only meet roughly half of the job as listed, right? The different skills. And that just says something about confidence in the position in which, are you applying? Are you putting yourself out there and, willing to take risks? We do see that there are these gender differences in terms of what people are open to, in terms of pushback, no, failure. And so we challenge you, if you feel that you're not kind of putting yourself out there, we challenge you to do that. By the way, our next rock climbing event next month is a great way to experience some growth from failure. It's going to be in the Golden, Colorado area.
So I actually, Natalie, I interpreted that question differently. And I wonder if you can answer the different interpretation, which is a difference in negotiating if the person you're negotiating with identifies as a woman versus a man. Might there be different tactics that you would use?
Got it. That's really interesting. And thank you for that. And it looks like she jumped in with a clarification as well. So what I would say is it is really important that you are using techniques like active listening, that you are doing things like, mirroring and basically working with and communicating in such a way that is going to be receptive in terms of who is that person that you're working with. This is whether it's sales or negotiating. If I am working with somebody or speaking with somebody who's more formal, I will want to mirror or basically be more formal in conversation with that individual. Also, again, around gender, I think men and women, or I know men and women process and communicate differently. So there's a lot that we could talk about there. I don't think that the overall kind of prep research and, presenting with confidence, I wouldn't change any of that, but I would say that concept of active listening, watching things like the body language, their communication style, all of those absolutely should come into play.
Yeah. And along those lines, I think know the environment you're working in, right? Because there's different formality based on the industry you might be in or the type of organization.
Absolutely.
Okay,
so we have, sorry.
I was just going to say, I feel like there were a couple of questions that were a little bit less personal, and I wonder if we can answer one or two of those. So somebody anonymous said, what about when you're negotiating with a group? For example, do you only focus on those who seem movable?
Yeah, so I think I would steer back to that idea that when you're doing that research and preparation, you want to understand what is that organizational structure, who's going to be influencing, moving, making the decisions. And there's a lot that you can do before you even get in that room. If you have multiple people in that conversation, what you say in that 20 minutes or so, of course matters, but what kind of legwork have you done going into it? Do they already know that you're a great employee? Is there buy-in, right? Have you maybe asked for support from your manager or mentor or individuals who can basically, in addition to what you're saying, reinforce and already have shared with that executive team or those individuals who are making the decision? Natalie's a performer. She's great. She, excels in these areas. We should really, try to keep her or, give her a raise or move her into a new role. So I don't know. I guess I would say it's not just about what's happening in that room. It's really about the way you've navigated and also, the way that you're articulating and the way that you're asking. So I hope that answers the question. Feel free, Marissa, if you want to dive in.
I think along those lines too, it's interesting. Sometimes our perception of who is movable and who is not is a little bit of a false perception. It's like what somebody wants us to see. So I think it's possible as you kind of learn more and ask some strategic questions that you might find the people that you think are not movable actually are. It's just about appealing to what matters to them, like their why, kind of how Natalie talked about at the beginning, like being firm and understanding what your why is.
And I like this one question. Again, it's anonymous. Do you have any tips on how to individually track and present your own progress and achievements when in terms of how you come up with a data-driven approach or ask for a promotion or raise rather than I feel I deserve because, and that's a great question. I think that qualitative is helpful, but quantitative and actually showing, this is how I'm impacting the top or bottom line is truly impactful. And ultimately it's a numbers game, right? So I would say that type of exercise is something that I've worked on individually with people. And it's something where I'll give you some prompts, but we're happy to work with you on it as well. But basically trying to quantify where you've made an impact. So digging into, maybe if you're sales versus marketing, they're going to be different numbers. So my example I used was marketing because that can be harder to quantify than sales. And that's why I'd said, this was the pipeline generated versus deals closed. And I pointed to attribution in place. I pointed to that being just one event that I'd participated in, as a marketing resource. So qualitative is great, but quantitative, you very much want to get into numbers, if and when you can. One thing you could do throughout the year, if you don't want to do this, or kind of save this for the promotion discussion, is maybe when you do a project and you feel really good about it, dig into the numbers, or, have a few bullet points of like, hey, this is something I did, goal setting, jotting down things so that you can revisit that later. That's always a great idea.
I think also thinking about things that you can track that aren't necessarily even like a financial number, but impact the bottom line. So something personally that I know I've tracked in other roles is like number of new relationships that I've helped the organization form, because that was a goal for the organization. So think about what matters for, where you work and what matters in your role, and think about how you can be creative about what is trackable, because everything is trackable. Whether or not it's quantitative or qualitative may be kind of a breaking point.
Yeah. And even, finding metrics like that. I mean, Salesforce, which I'm sure a lot of you use, all of that can be built pretty easily based on reporting within a CRM typically. Yeah. But yes, take notes throughout the year, because that's something that you can reflect on and, feel good about. And then you can revisit it later.
And Excel and spreadsheets are your friend, right? So if your organization has a tighter budget or you don't have access to, a CRM, you can still track this information.
Absolutely.
Yeah. There was another question about how you can use another offer without hurting the current relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. So I love backup offers. I love having another plan in place. It's both going to give you confidence, but also allow you to potentially step up both. But I think you need to be careful about, again, presenting with, authority and confidence, but you also want to reinforce that they want to work with you or they want to hire you. So I wouldn't, be very brash or say, oh, well, I have this offer, so if you can't match us, I'm leaving. I think there's an art, right? It's art and science. And, basically coming up with language so that it can be, I really want to work with you. I've been working with your business, or, I've looked into your business and I'm really interested in what this opportunity is. Talk about the alignment of culture or values or mission, or, what the business does. Reinforce, why you want to work there, but I know that based on, the market rates and this other offer I have, I'm just going to need to get a little bit more because, it just doesn't feel right accepting something when I have a bigger offer away. So I think you can reinforce, why you want to work there and why they should hire you or give you the offer or increase the offer without just kind of banging them over the head saying, you have to give me more.
Well, and I'm also curious about your interpretation, Natalie, because I think if you already work somewhere and you know that you are playing a critical role in the organization, I kind of feel like them knowing that you're willing to walk away is power in a way.
Absolutely.
And I'm curious how you see that.
Oh, absolutely. So when I say playing offers off of each other, believe me, like you can maximize. And when an organization already knows that you're successful in a role, the leverage is with you. And that's something I guess I hadn't mentioned in this talk, but knowing where the leverage is and knowing when you have the leverage, again, you don't want to be a total a-hole about it. I'm trying not to swear, but use it to your advantage, and you really can walk up your pay substantially if you have an offer away, because again, they've already invested in you. They know that you're a performer. You can absolutely, increase what you're currently getting if you have a live offer away.
Yeah. And I think for women and a lot of the folks that we interact with pretty regularly in our free community, that this is something that can be really uncomfortable. And so I would just encourage folks, irregardless of your gender, that having that approach to a negotiation where you already work somewhere is an approach that really can work.
And we got a good question in the chat. So really quick, it's anonymous. And it basically said, I had suggested that asking for things based on personal needs is valid. And just to spell it out a little bit more, an employer would specifically find that view to be biased just because somebody has kids and somebody doesn't. If they have the same title, role, comparable experience, comp disparity, shouldn't necessarily be there. And I completely agree with you. So I guess what I was saying more so was, as a reason or letting them know, hey, I need to have a conversation sooner because I'm buying a house. I would never say that because you're buying a house or because you have kids, you should get paid more than the other person, but to give your employer or your boss the, basically the information and say, listen, I want to keep working here, but I need to get paid more. Again, speaking to your value and what you bring to the table, but telling them why you're having the conversation. That's what I was speaking to. Listen, I am in my mid 30s. In my 20s, I was a top producer on a sales team, and I got paid more than anybody else with, families and homes because I was producing. And that was great. And so I'm very much about, are you asking for what you need and are you bringing value? So I agree with you. You never wanted to expect, or you never want an employer to be biased, but if you're open and direct about this is what I need and this is why, and by the way, I'm a producer, I'm, of value, that's what I was more trying to get at. Great question.
Yeah, and questions like that, so that everyone knows, are ones that we dive deeper into in our monthly money talks conversation. So they're workshops we do every month in our community. And so I'm dropping a link into the chat. This is how you can sign up to get on our list, and we'll be sending out information about the community, but that's all part of being a member, which is free right now. So just an invitation, if you want to continue that conversation and you identify as a woman, we'd love to see you there. And if you identify as a different gender, we'd always love the opportunity to chat and work with you one-on-one, or work with other folks that perhaps where you work, or groups. We also do that.
Yeah, great. And I think there's a good question that came in to the panelists, which was, what can you do in a negotiation if the other party has a lot more power in their position compared to yours, and they aren't afraid to exploit it? I think this is a good question, but I would actually challenge you, Rob. It might not be a culture or a business or a team that you want to even work with, right? So I think we want to develop your authority and your confidence and make sure that you feel aligned with your ask. But if you get to a situation where somebody is trying to exploit you based on, their role or power, I mean, that might just be a bad situation, and one that you're not going to be fulfilled with. So it looks like we may have answered all the questions, at least that have one more.
There was one more quick one that I thought you could answer. Earlier on, you mentioned some books, and somebody was asking for a re-mention of those books. Do you recall?
Yes, of course. So I can put them quickly. Let's see, all panelists and attendees. It was Thinking Fast and Slow. This is a denser read, but it's awesome. And then a slightly easier read, because it's Michael Lewis, is called The Undoing Theory. And it's basically, similar, or, covers similar topics. But you can always email me as well, and Marissa put my email in there. Well, listen, it looks like we're coming up to the hour. This was really nice. Again, I'm sorry that we weren't able to connect in person, but we'd love to see you, for other workshops and offline if you're in the Colorado area and up for meeting in a mask. So please reach out, let us know if you have any questions. And it was great connecting with you all today.